the near future is the setting for the film. Humanity is in danger of being wiped out by a large asteroid that is moving toward Earth. As a result, the UNMS effort, which is being directed by the Chinese government, has brought the entire world together. It plans to use a sizable base on the Moon's surface to fire a number of super-nuclear missiles. The asteroid will be destroyed with the help of these missiles, and the Moon will act as a shield to prevent any residual pieces from falling to Earth. The missiles are launched and the enormous asteroid is effectively destroyed after 8 years of careful planning. Everyone on Earth goes into a frenzy as a result of this. After the project commander Xing returns from launching the nuclear missiles, the maintenance engineer for the project, Dugu Yue, greets her at the lunar base. Yue's obvious infatuation for his commander is revealed, but the latter chastises him for being a lazy and sends him back to his room. As it turns out, one of the nuclear missiles was accidentally diverted by a solar storm, sending some of the asteroid pieces in the direction of the UNMS Moon base. Everyone at the base is abruptly alerted by Commander Xing, who directs them to hasten to the evacuation rockets. However, Yue is preoccupied with his thoughts and is unaware of the danger outside. By the time he notices the warnings and regains consciousness, all but one of the rockets had already launched from the lunar surface. Xing controls the last rocket while Yue races to catch up to her in his space rover. Unfortunately, he runs into a huge hole on the way and is forced to flee, leaving Xing behind. Yue eventually ascends back to the surface where she observes the rocket take off. At the same time, asteroids bombard the lunar surface, wiping out everything in their path. Yue flees to a neighboring crater in search of safety out of fear for his life. But the asteroid's impact tosses him like a rag doll and renders him comatose. Unbeknownst to him, another large asteroid is traveling toward the Earth while passing over the Moon. When Yue finally regains consciousness and starts cursing at his friends for leaving him behind, he realizes that a large asteroid is headed straight for Earth. Soon after, a huge explosion destroys a sizable chunk of the Earth's surface. Yue is devastated and goes back to the lunar base to try to make a call for assistance. All of his attempts to speak with others, however, are received with silence. After a few days, Yue soon realizes there is a chance he may be the last person alive in the cosmos. He starts remembering his diseased buddies after falling into depression. He has enough food to live for at least 80 years, which is the sole positive aspect. He makes the decision to visit Commander Xing's room one day. He sets up a date with a homemade figurine of Xing because his loneliness is making him crazy. He makes out with the figure after the supper. Some people have been found to have survived the asteroid, and Commander Xing and the rest of Yue's crew have returned to Earth without incident. Commander Xing and the others watch Yue go crazy and make out with her photo from somewhere in an underground bunker. Although they are ashamed by his behavior, the project chairman thinks they should get in touch with Yue. In order to give those living on the planet hope and help them cope with the appalling conditions they are now experiencing, he wishes to share the tale of Yue's survival. The asteroid strike's destruction of the communication link between Yue and the base on Earth is the only issue, though. Yue discovers a shredded food box on the floor at the lunar base. He is surprised since he doesn't remember opening it. Yue suddenly hears a disturbance coming from the storeroom, and when he gets there, he sees the silhouette of a voluptuous woman. As a result, Yue regains hope and begins to daydream about repopulating the planet. Even worse, he starts flirting with the shadow he believes to be a lady. To his surprise, Yue discovers that Kong, a large kangaroo, is consuming the food that had been stored. In fact, the animal was taken to the lunar base for scientific investigation. Yue grabs a shovel and attempts to frighten the animal out of the store area as rapidly as possible. But regrettably, doing so simply makes the kangaroo agitated and kills him. Yue disguises herself as a female kangaroo and tries to seduce Kong after being unable to defeat it physically. The kangaroo becomes aroused and wants to have coitus with Yue, which causes the ruse to quickly backfire on him. Yue is made visible when Kong removes Yue's disguise throughout the procedure. The kangaroo becomes even more enraged as a result, and it kicks Yue across the room. Yue pulls out his Gatling pistol and begins firing plastic balls at Kong indiscriminately as everyone on Earth watches in shock. Kong first seems to go away, but after some time it returns and continues to beat Yue. They each knock each other out on the ground, ending the battle after hours of back and forth. Yue discovers that the communication equipment is picking up signals from Earth as he stands up from the ground. Yue once again feels a spark of optimism that perhaps humanity has prevailed as a result of this. Unbeknownst to him, the kangaroo's tail was what actually produced the signal. Yue informs Kong with emotion that they could have another chance to go home after finding the motivation to do so. The kangaroo spoils the occasion by punching him once again. Since the event, 200 days have passed, and Yue has mastered the art of getting along with kangaroos. He has also devised a way to go to Earth. He intends to send himself to a nearby space station using the spaceship left behind by mission Apollo 18, then use that station's escape pods to return to Earth. Yue and Kong decide to go get the spaceship one day. Eventually, the two are able to pull it back into the base, but Yue discovers that the rocket can only support 20 pounds of weight. He can only address this issue if he discovers an alternative propulsion technology. Fortunately, the nuclear weapon prototype is still on the moon, so Yue makes the decision to go get it. Yue sets out with Kong to find the nuclear rocket right away after assembling the appropriate gear. He is aware that the trip may take weeks because the rocket's research facility is on the far side of the moon. Because Yue's craft is entirely solar-powered and the sun only shines on the moon's surface for 14 days every lunar cycle, Commander Xing and the others back on Earth nervously monitor them. This indicates that although the automobile has a maximum range of 6,500 kilometers, the research facility is located 8,000 kilometers from Yue's headquarters. Yue will go lost in the wilderness when the sun sets on the moon and perish from exposure. Xing and the others realize that Yue is actually traveling in the opposite way just as everything seems to be lost. As the moon barely revolves at 16 kilometers per hour, it turns out he intends to chase the sun. With only 4 hours of sleep every day, Yue has only 41 days to fulfill his quest. He grows increasingly depressing and even begins having hallucinations as the days go on. Thankfully, Kong is there to encourage him to continue. Finally reaching the research center, the two had traveled a long and dangerous journey. Yue searches inside and cautiously drops the nuclear bomb to the ground. The goal is jeopardized when the kangaroo starts fiddling with the control buttons, which causes Yue to get anxious. Yue confines Kong inside his trunk as he returns to the home base with the warhead to prevent him from endangering the operation once more. Yue plays loud music to pass the time on the arduous and lengthy ride. He thus is unaware when the kangaroo-carrying trunk disengages from the vehicle. Yue ultimately understands that Kong has been left behind as a result of his error after having traveled hundreds of kilometers. Yue must now make a challenging choice. He will lose the sunshine and the car will break down if he returns to get Kong. However, Kong will freeze to death if he stays. Yue mulls over his options for a time before deciding to risk his own safety and return to get the kangaroo. He finally reaches the vehicle and meets up with his pal after hours of driving in the other way. During an emotional exchange between the two, Kong kisses him enthusiastically like a puppy. As the sun continued to move away from their car, the two headed off on their trek towards the base while attempting to stay awake. Sadly, despite their best attempts, the two are unable to find the sun, making it impossible for them to survive. Despite this, Yue doesn't give up and keeps on driving the car even as it nears the end of its battery life. In an effort to save as much energy as possible, he also shuts off the heat. The vehicle eventually runs out of battery power and stops 55 kilometers from their headquarters. With barely 3 hours of oxygen remaining for the pair, Yue ultimately gives up. He gets out of the car and awaits his demise. He realizes that his animal buddy is drawing to the reflection in his mirror, which gives him a startling insight. He rapidly opens the door of his car and converts it into a sled that Kong will drive. The kangaroo then starts to run after it as Yue flashes light beams in front of him. He begins sliding across the moon's surface like Santa Claus once the prank succeeds. Once more refusing to give up, Yue tells Kong to jump across a large pit that the two eventually come upon. He lets loose the gas tank on his back as they fly over the enormous hole, giving them the thrust they need to reach the other side and finally the base. The project's director broadcasts Yue's voyage to the remaining people back on Earth, giving them inspiration and hope for the future of mankind. Yue ultimately returns the massive bomb to the moon and gets ready to leave for Earth. He is unaware of the fact that a second asteroid is traveling toward Earth. Later, Yue gets another signal, which gives him hope that the last people on Earth are attempting to get in touch with him. Unfortunately, his joy quickly gives way to sadness as he realizes that the kangaroo's interference with the wires is the real reason everything is about to happen. As a result, Yue chooses to abandon his goal after losing hope once more. He tries to give up, but the folks back home won't allow him, and they come up with a plan to get in touch with him. They all assemble in one location, and they all point their flashlights in the direction of the moon. When Yue finally sees the signal, he is driven to tears upon understanding that there are other humans still living. He later realigns the receivers with renewed purpose and is finally able to communicate with people on Earth, including his crush Commander Xing. In a private exchange, Yue admits to Xing that she was the only factor in his decision to join the UNMS mission. His revelation moves Xing, who then expresses regret for leaving him behind. In the following scene, Yue begins altering the rocket's propulsion mechanism with the assistance of his comrades back on Earth so that it can return him to his home. Yue and Kong finish the preparation, start off on their adventure, and safely enter orbit without knowing that a second asteroid is also traveling straight for Earth. Yue arrives to the lunar space station while the people back home are having a party. Commander Xing eventually learns about the asteroid that is going to destroy the planet Earth as he is ready to board the escape pods. The UNMS HQ then understands that because Yue is in control of the nuclear weapon on the lunar space station, only he can rescue mankind. With no other option, Xing informs Yue of this situation, and to his surprise, he decides to give his life in order to preserve humanity. UNMS then gives the order for everyone back on Earth to retreat to their safe havens and be ready for the worst. Yue, who is now in space, sends Kong back to Earth in an escape pod after bidding him a sorrowful farewell. Yue is a mess emotionally, but he gathers himself since he has been given the mission of saving humanity. After some time, Yue moves in the direction of the asteroid and enters a group of enormous boulders. Although he makes every effort to stay away from them, his surroundings start to get congested and chaotic. Eventually, a boulder strikes his ship, sending it spinning wildly across space. Yue rushes to manage the utterly out-of-control spacecraft. He eventually devises a solution. To ultimately stop the spin, he busts open the ship's entrance and uses it to equalize the pressure. The ship's engine has been utterly wrecked, and when Yue checks on it to see whether it can still guide him to the asteroid, he discovers as much. He is left with no alternative but to physically deliver the nuclear weapon to the massive asteroid. Yue therefore passes away in excruciating anguish. But without pausing, he steps outside and unlocks the warhead. Then, trailing the nuclear weapon behind him, he utilizes his jetpack to fly directly into the enormous asteroid. Despite the many boulders progressively destroying Yue's spacesuit, he eventually arrives to the asteroid. Before a massive explosion occurs and the asteroid is blasted to pieces, he briefly remembers his crush Commander Zing. People eventually return to Earth and come out of their bunkers, noticing the enormous explosion in the sky. They are happy to have escaped the end of the world, but they are also upset because Yue gave his life. After a number of years, mankind have brought Earth back to its former splendor. Kong the kangaroo is restored to its natural home, and Commander Zing and her staff are sent back to the moon to carry out their mission of defending the Earth from attacks from other planets.